This is Bibi Aisha. When she was 12 years old, Bibi was promised to a Taliban fighter to satisfy a debt of her father's. She was married at 14 and used as a servant by her husband. He forced her to sleep outside with the animals and repeatedly abused her. In 2009, Bibi fled her husband and returned to her family home, where the Taliban caught her. She was sentenced and taken to a mountain clearing where her husband cut off her ears and nose. According to an article by Time magazine, the Taliban commander who awarded the punishment later said that Bibi had to be made an example of, lest other girls in the village try to do the same thing.
When they cut off my nose and ears, I passed out, Aisha says. In the middle of the night, it felt like there was cold water in my nose. I opened my eyes and I couldn't even see because of all the blood. She barely survived.
The plight of Bibi Aisha is not uncommon in Afghanistan. Under the Ulema Council's Code of Conduct, a code endorsed by Afghan President Hamid Karzai, men have the right to beat their wives under what the code calls special circumstances. What these special circumstances are, however, is left entirely up to the men's judgment. Consequently, 87% of Afghanistan's female population has reported being abused physically, psychologically, sexually, or has been forced into an early or unwanted marriage. The government is entirely on the side of the men in these cases. According to Human Rights Watch, many women flee their abusive homes only to be captured and sentenced to prison. The legal system in Afghanistan does not protect women from abuse or ensure fair trials. Thus, nearly half of women in Afghan prisons are incarcerated for moral crimes such as running away from home and adultery. The subjugation of women has been present in Afghanistan for centuries. In order to more accurately represent the plight of women in Afghanistan and work towards a solution to gender inequality, we must study the history of the country's fight for women's rights. Historically, Afghanistan has experienced two periods of intense social reforms and has taken large strides in reaching women's equality during those periods. Each of these progressive periods, however, have been met with intense conservative backlashes, which have reduced the position of Afghan women in the society significantly. The first period of progressive social reform began as early as the 1880s when Abdin Rahman Khan led a progressive movement to alter laws subjugating women. He believed that women deserved what he called just treatment. This liberal thought continued through the reign of Amatullah Khan. During his reign, the conservative portion of society began to organize and rebel against the promotion of women's equality. Tribal leaders objected to the social reforms because they challenged their influence and altered centuries of provincial practices relating to polygamy and the veil. When Amatullah attempted to give women the freedom to choose their own partners, the men of rural Afghanistan viewed this as a loss of their social status and influence, a degradation of the family unit, and a threat to their financial security. The Loya Jirga was formed from factions of these tribal leaders, and in 1928, they forced Amatullah to reverse his policies as they were considered too Western. The second period of progressive thought began in the 1950s when the Soviet Union aided Afghanistan in modernization. Out of economic necessity, women became nurses, doctors, and teachers. This continued until 1978 when a decree was issued with the intention of giving women equal rights. Again, there was a fierce conservative backlash from the rural Afghani. In 1992, the Mujahideen took over Kabul, and during their reign there were frequent stories of rapes, killing, and other atrocities against women. In 1996, the United States, Pakistan, Iran, and Saudi Arabia backed the Taliban to overthrow the Mujahideen. Little did they foresee that the Taliban would restrict women's rights even further. The Taliban made it mandatory that women be accompanied by a male relative at all times, required the use of a burqa, forbade girls attendance at school, forced women into unwanted marriages, and many other atrocities. Before the removal of the Taliban in 2001, a mere 5,000 girls were enrolled in school. 2.5 million girls are currently attending school, but as U.S. troops are removed from the country, there is fear that the Taliban could regain influence. 86% of women are afraid of a Taliban-style returning to Afghanistan and hope to continue education for their daughters. In recent years, there has been a resurgence of Taliban forces, and women continue to feel the harsh effects of a society in which they have very few rights. Bibi Aisha's story is merely one example of the injustices women continue to endure. The present-day socially imposed oppression of Afghan women cannot be entirely blamed on the Taliban's conservative regime, but also on the reinforcement of gender roles and women's lower place in society, which has been in place for over 100 years. It is necessary to consider both the advances and regressions in women's rights throughout Afghan history, in order to learn from past mistakes and make long-lasting social changes. Rural Afghanistan has long sustained a patriarchal social hierarchy, meaning that the men are dominant. Due to ethnic rivalries and varying interpretations of Islam, there are many different factions dividing the Afghan people, especially those in the countryside. It is the provincial practices of rural Afghanis that jeopardize women's position in society through intertribal power plays, highly patriarchal societies, and an overzealous dedication to the institution of honor. The women in the family unit are considered symbols of honor in Afghan culture, and thus the women are forced to stay in domesticity, remain voiceless within the household, and observe the veil. Despite the oppression of their society, Afghan girls still maintain hope for a better future. According to Dr. Huma Ahmed Ghosh, the situation can be fixed by compromise of Islamic and secular ideals of gender relations, along with economic reconstruction of rural Afghanistan. The first step in reaching equality lies in the hands of the women themselves. Women can take advantage of the economic troubles of their country and redefine their roles in the family and community through participation in bolstering the economy. The degree to which an individual can be free from the family or a social group is one of the features defining gender in any social setting. Society's perception of women must be redefined in such a way as to ensure that their social and economic contributions may be recognized. An organization to aid in the economic empowerment of women is womenforwomen.org. According to their website, Women for Women provides rights awareness, leadership education, and literacy and vocational training in an effort to elevate the status of women in Afghanistan. All of these steps are vital in changing the Afghan people's perception towards women. Education for women's leadership skills and literacy provide women as a solid basis from which they can begin to view themselves as worthy of respect. If women are literate, they will be more likely to contribute to the economic advancement of their communities, and in the process, alter the perception of women in their society. Through hope and determination, Bibi has survived this ordeal. Thanks to Women for Women, Bibi looks forward to a brighter future in the United States. Women for Women has offered her sanctuary as she furthers her education and learns English. She currently makes beaded jewelry which she hopes to one day sell and make a living. She has now received a prosthetic nose from doctors at the Grossman Burn Center and has begun an 8-month rehabilitation program. Bibi's abuser has been brought to justice as he has been arrested by Afghan police.
What's up?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?